So I'm just giving an update on getting these exhaust headers to seal. Apparently they were leaking and causing some fumes in the cabin. So I think I've got the solution. The first problem was that you cannot use brand new exhaust headers. The aftermarket exhaust headers have a casting that is actually defective. And this casting does not have the bolts lined up. So if you look on the aftermarket one, you'll find this bolt is actually offset over. And the result is that your ports don't line up with the heads. And this is a disaster, and I had to throw these out. These ones are junkyard headers. I had them machined. I've measured them with a straight edge, and according to the straight edge, they are flat to within 3/1000ths over the length. And a flatness of 3/1000ths over the whole length of this header is within the limits of 4/1000ths, which is specified by people in the know. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. I looked at a number of different gasket options, and the Mr. Gasket Ultra Seal seemed like the best option. I've asked Mr. Gasket, and you can apparently install these either way. It doesn't matter which side you have. What this is, it's a layer of graphite on either side of a thin steel frame. Now there are the aluminum gasket, which is just a bunch of layers of thin aluminum, which apparently seals even better. The problem with these are called Mr. Percy's gaskets, or Percy's gaskets. And the problem with these is that the ports are not exactly the same shape. So you can see the one ports versus the other ports. This isn't going to line up exactly, and the reason is these are for the LA heads, which are the older style pre-1990 heads of the Chrysler. So that doesn't help. Mr. Gasket also has some aluminum gaskets, but they are for ported heads where you've actually enlarged the port considerably, and they don't fit either. So that doesn't help. The other option is the Remflex gasket. The Remflex gasket is a really thick gasket. It's probably like 3 times thicker than this. It's made of graphite. Apparently it provides an excellent seal even if your headers are warped. If your headers are not warped and are freshly machined, I don't see a reason to do those. And I'm a bit concerned that they're a bit too spongy, that your head isn't rigidly attached to your manifold. So I don't really know if those are the best idea, but everyone raves about them and says they're the best thing. So maybe those are an option. These are the ones I'll be installing. So what I've done is to make sure this job is really nice and easy, I've gotten rid of the studs which are in these 2 bolt holes, and I've got these B7 bolts. Now B7 is a grade of bolt material that resists high heat, and it's the correct material for this application. Now what I've done is I've gotten some extra, much longer bolts, and I've got these 5/8 spacers with a 5/16 hole in them from McMaster, and I've machined a little recess in there so that the pressure point of this spacer is exactly like the original washer. You notice the original washer is like a cup shape. So I've just machined a little bit of a recess there. I don't know if that's important, but then I can put these in like this, and the amount that sticks out is the same amount as the other bolts. And these are much easier to tighten and work with if they stick out rather than if they're flush, and there's a lot more length of bolt to stretch a little bit and provide a little bit of a elasticity. The actual bolt can be ordered from MSC, and I'll just put here, these are great for all exhaust applications. You can just get the length that you want. And I mean, they come in 1/4 inch increments of length, so you can choose whatever bolt you want. And this is much better than the ARP bolts, which you don't really know what they're made of. And apparently stainless steel has some problems binding in your heads. So these are actually the very best material that you can choose. I mean, the only better material is a specialized high heat application material that you get, which I don't think is appropriate for this, and it's very difficult to find bolts. Now, if you look at the machining, the surface is not particularly smooth, and I'm told that this is actually good because you want the surface to actually bite into the gasket material so the gasket cannot move. So apparently this is not I mean, I would expect that when you machine get a header machine that you have a much better finish, because my machinist did not do a very good job. But this doesn't seem to be of any consequence if you speak to people. Now, as for the original bolts, they're good enough to put back in. Some of them I had to use a thread chaser just to clean them up. But these are going right back in. I thought it was best not to try and substitute with these bolts. It's very difficult to find bolts that have got this pylon sticking out of the top where you can bolt on the heat shield. But once these have been in the car for a long period of time, they go extremely hard because of the heat cycles. So I think these are the perfect bolts for this. There's no need to buy other bolts. Now it's very difficult to actually torque up these bolts because there's no space on the side of the engine. So I made this little tool. I just took a wrench and I cut the wrench off and I welded on a number 14 millimeter socket. So now I can actually put this over the bolt head and actually torque it tight without having to get inside that complicated geometry on the side of the engine bay. Now you can actually go better than using the best gasket. If you look at this V6 header for the Dodge, it came off an engine now which was factory original, and there was no gasket. Okay, there's no gasket and there's very little rust except for just along the top edge, because the engine had been standing in the at the junkyard for so long and water is obviously collected at the top. But this was mated directly to the head without a gasket whatsoever. And of course the best way to do that then, I assume, is to get this machine to a very, very fine RA finish, and then also get the head machined to the same RA finish, and then bolt these two together without a gasket at all. And that will provide an excellent seal. Unfortunately, that's very difficult to do, and it requires taking the head off and the manifold and sending both to the machine shop. And the machine shop had to be competent to be able to mount this in a milling machine, and it's a very awkward shape. So finding a machine shop to actually do this job was difficult enough. So I don't know how you would do that. Everything that I've said here applies to all the Dodge 5.2, 5.9, the ZJ 5.2, 5.9, and the Dodge V6 3.9 engines, because they all have a very similar exhaust manifold. The only difference is that the ZJ exhaust manifold is much shorter over here. You can see this sticks out a lot longer, but on the ZJ it's a very short, stubby type of flange mount. The other thing that I did is I did quite an ugly job of welding the nut directly onto the cast iron using some nickel alloy. And this is necessary on the passenger side because it's very difficult to get to this nut to hold it with your fingers while you're screwing from underneath the vehicle. So the only way to actually get this to hold is to use a piece of wire to hold it in place. I decided just to weld it on there, and that way it's much easier to assemble and disassemble. I've smoothed this off with some sandpaper, so these flanges should be really smooth. And I plan to also seal them up with a Permatex ultra high temp copper gasket sealer, RTV. And this is that red stuff, and apparently you can use it for exhaust manifolds. It may be so high heat at this part in the exhaust system that RTV will melt away, or evaporate away, but I'm going to try it anyway. I have put it on here. I didn't notice any leak of this part of the flange. Now, if your surface is flat enough and there's no rust or pitting, because often the rust will actually cause pitting in these and you won't have a flat surface here, then the easiest way to fix to clean this up is just using this. Okay, these are little wheel polishing wheels. So I got these on eBay. So it says they're wheel polishing wheels, and they come in different grits. Like this is the coarsest grit, but I can't really tell the difference in the finish between the different grits. They basically all produce the same finish, and what they do is they just polish the surface. So you can easily turn a surface like this into surfing like this within a few minutes. And you'll probably only use 2 or 3 of these. And then you can buy a whole box fairly cheaply, like I have. And you just go through them very quickly, and you use the Dremel like a pen, and you just Dremel your way around, and you polish up and produce a perfect surface. Now I've done that also on the head as well as the manifold, so my surface is nice and shiny. These do not remove any material when you're dealing with something as hard as cast iron. They just polish the surface, but they don't actually take off material that will make your surface no longer be flat. So that's an excellent way of cleaning up surfaces, and I think it would work well for engine block mating surfaces as well. So if you look down there, this is on the passenger side. I've already polished that surface on these heads, and that surface is now white metal and clean. You can't really see from the angle, but that surface is perfectly clean now and ready to install. So on this side you can see I've now installed, this is the driver's side, and I've installed the McMaster spacers with the MSC bolts, and everything's been torqued up, and these are the Mr. gasket, and everything's ready to go. Of course, the only thing left is to put the heat shield on, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to warm this engine up, retighten it, let it cool, retighten it, and do that several times to make sure that this thing is completely seated and that gasket has been properly crushed. And I'm going to keep doing that several times to make absolutely sure that you're not getting any creep or loosening of the bolts or anything like that. Now some people actually drive the car and then retighten it after the time. I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm actually going to warm up the car, let it cool completely, and retighten these. And when I've done that a few times, then I'm going to put the heat shield on. And I think that's the best thing to make sure that these gaskets compress and you retain torqueness. Now if you look down in there, you can see that is the top of the exhaust wire pipe, and I've stuffed rag in there just to make sure that no debris goes down in there. I'm going to, you can see that's a bit red around the edge, and that red is actually the Permatex from the last installation. Now I'm going to get a drill with some wire brush and just actually clean that up to make sure that it's a fresh mate on metal to metal contact, and put the Permatex, a thin layer of Permatex on that rim where the red is. So that should work very well. Another thing that's important is to use this releasing compound when installing your bolts. Okay, so this stuff is, there it is, Permatex Aluminium Anti-Seize Lubricant. So you put this, it's the most horrible substance, it's like gooey aluminium inside some substrate. But this is essential when you install header bolts, because you want to be able to get them out one day. So this it prevents them from seizing up. Put a little bit on the threads and then before you install the threads. So you should have all the information in this video on installing these headers on Dodges and Jeeps, and have something that's absolutely perfect and won't leak. I've been through many trial and errors trying to get my headers not to leak, and this is the best information I was able to find out. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video.